Well, good evening for Sunday night. Alive. I'm scarcely alive. I got a very bad cold, so don't be surprised if I start coughing in the middle of everything. And we have a couple of things I want to curry up. Last week, I made the stupid mistake of saying that the New York Times, for a week or so, had not come after the Catholic Church. But I don't regularly have a subscription to the New York Times. I have to borrow it from other people because I won't pay for it. And sure enough, they had gotten an attack in, a very miserable, disgusting one, against Brother Andre. All of you know that Brother Andre is now canonized, Saint Andre, who founded the Oratory of St. Joseph in Montreal. I went there to visit as a boy with my family as pilgrimages to Montreal, to St. Joseph's. Brother Andre was a beloved and holy man, very well known for working miracles all over the place. Well, the New York Times put an article in about Brother Andre, not very long, but the rest of the article was a vicious attack of scandal, something that happened half a century after the death of Brother Andre, and they had to drag that in. So please, give me a break on your email, publisher@nytimes.com. publisher@newyorknytimes.com. Or you'd like to call up the public editor, I'd love to give you his telephone number, 212-556-7652. He'll be in tomorrow morning, so give him a few calls. They make me sick, very sick. Now, and I have no intention of taking off the New York Times. I used to read it for years. It was a great paper, but it now has become an anti-Catholic rag. Now, today, our program today is about SOAR, a name, SOAR, S-O-A-R, and it means an organization supporting our aging religious. Many of us went to school for sisters, or for brothers and priests as teachers, and I want them to show on our calendar here, our camera, the sisters who taught me. They are Dominican sisters from Caldwell, New Jersey. The sister standing to my left is Mother Dolorita, who was Mother General of the Order, and the sister to my right, the second sister, Sister Victoria, was a canonizable saint. Probably several others in that picture as well. So those were the sisters that I went to grammar school with. A wonderful experience. Then I went to high school, and I had the Sisters of Charity of Convent Station. And there are the sisters in the picture there, including the sister who taught me in the second grade and gave me my idea to be a priest. She's two to my left. That's Sister Teresa Maria, a canonizable saint. And you may notice that one of my classmates is African American, and that is Lorena Tyson, who was one of my classmates. I had a wonderful experience with sisters in grammar school and high school. And this evening, we're going to be doing some studying with sisters. And what's happening? We have a very interesting book this evening. It's called Sisters, Catholic Nuns and the Making of America. And it's by John Fialka. And John is here this evening, published by St. Martin's Press. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Father.
And we're so pleased you're here. And with us is our other good friend, been with us before, Joe Delaney.
Thank
Joe,
you, Father Benedict.
And we're going to be talking this evening about sisters. We have a number of sisters in the audience tonight. Sister Kathleen Lunsman of the Sisters of the IHM, Immaculate Heart of Mary in Scranton. And we also have the Sisters of Life, an order founded by Cardinal O'Connor. So I want to look at what we owed to our sisters. And unfortunately, it's very sad there are not very many sisters left. I'm happy to say that, like the Sisters of Life and the sisters of our community, they're growing nicely. But many communities have lost great numbers of sisters, largely through age and death. And unfortunately, people have stopped joining religious communities. There must be a renewal of religious life. And the Friars of the Renewal, that's what we're about, bringing back religious life. And we started 20 years ago with 9 men. We now have 129 friars and almost 40 sisters who started several years ago. So things are growing. And tonight we want to talk about the future of religious life and also the support that we should have of aging sisters. Some of you may not be aware the religious communities that have lost many of their members do not have sources of support and care for the aged religious, especially sisters. And I'm going to ask John to talk us about it. Tell us about the situation.
Well, I'm a former Wall Street Journal reporter. I sort of blundered into this situation in 1986 when I learned that there was a pension fund established for retired priests, but there weren't any for retired religious orders, most of whom are nuns. And the unfunded liability, the Wall Street Journal loves this word, unfunded liability was about $2 billion then. It's way higher than that now. But what that means is a retirement and dignity for these people just wasn't there. The money wasn't there. And I got a little indignant about it because, like Father, he and I went to different high schools, but they both had the same name, Immaculate Conception High School. Mine was in Iowa. And so I began exploring this, and I realized that there was this sort of inattention to the problem of how do you have these people who taught us about dignity retire in dignity. And so I researched a little further, and yeah, there were these orders who were on the verge of poverty. Some of them were having trouble paying for the funerals of deceased sisters, and they were proud women. They were not asking, they were enduring. But they had run into tough times. This was 1986, and the younger sisters weren't joining the way they used to, and so medical bills, it used to be an exchange of services in these organizations, And suddenly now you had to pay for all these services, and it was driving a lot of these orders into big cash problems. And so we wrote a story about that in the Wall Street Journal. And in my 40 years of being a reporter, I have never had a reaction like that. The phone rang off the hook for 2 weeks. They were a lot of them were Catholic professionals, doctors, lawyers, accountants, and they'd say, well, this is terrible. I didn't know about that. Where do I send the check? And I didn't know where they should send the check. And so I wrote their names down, and after about 100 of them, I contacted a friend of mine named Frank Butler. I said, Frank, we have the makings of an organization here that might want to do something, but we need more than their checks. We need their imagination. We need their effort and their spirit to fix this problem. And so out of that came Support Our Aging Religious, which started in Washington, and now it has chapters in California and New York and around the country. And we have raised $10 million since it was founded. And a lot of that is emergency money. If the convent can't get meals up to the 3rd floor where the infirmary is because the elevator is broken, we fix the elevator. And it's sort of built on that. And since then, the church has initiated, as you know, a collection for retired religious that is a top collection in the country in terms of raising money. It got me so interested, I wrote this book, Catholic Sisters in the Making of America, because I realized that the standard Catholic histories, one of them I quote in the beginning of the book, it says, the story of sisters, the fascinating story, somebody should write a book about it, and I did. If you were growing up in the church, the face you saw most often was a female. If you went to a hospital, it was a nurse. These people were the sort of foot soldiers of the church, and I thought it was about time. We wrote their history, and so that's basically what Sisters is about. Sorry for the long-winded answer.
Well, that's very good. Comprehensive. Joe.
Well, Father, John's article was an inspiration for me because I'm someone that was fortunate enough to grow up in a very good, strong Catholic family. We listened to Bishop Sheen. We went to Catholic school. But the people who most influenced us, besides our parents, were the sisters, the brothers, and the priests in our lives. And the thing that I can remember most is Sister taught us how to spell. Sister taught us how to write. Sister made sure we knew, and I would always wonder what Sister would do with the ability to make the internet work the way it should. But you know what was most important, Father? I was given the formation in the sacraments by the sisters. And I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that how I participate in life now, in my 40 years of marriage, going to daily communion, going to the sacraments, it was Sister's assurance that this is something that will sustain you for the rest of your life. So when I heard about what the challenges were for our elderly religious, and right now the unfunded liability for religious is $12 billion. And by 2033, it will be $20 billion. So there's a challenge out there to make sure that, as John said, we have the facilities where our religious are now that have fire alarms and heating systems and air conditions. So there's a lot of work. We'll talk about it later, how people can become involved in SOAR and help us in our ministry. But there is a feeling for the religious I have that I would have for my own mom and my own dad, my mother-in-law, my father-in-law. The sisters have always been part of my family and always will be.
Well, I think it's an important issue for us to take up on our EWTN broadcast. And so I decided several months ago that we wanted to do something about this, about SOAR. And as I told you, I'm a sister's boy, grammar school and high school. I may have mentioned this. When I was in the 2nd grade, we had this holy sister of charity, Sister Teresa Maria. And every day she went down and into the poor section of the city, Jersey City, climbed up to the top store, the barber told me, and took care of an old woman. And I went up the fire escape and looked in, and there was this old woman. I thought she was a witch out of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And I got scared and I jumped down. But I thought, my goodness, here is a sister that takes care of a witch, and it doesn't do her any harm. So that holy sister, if I was a pope, I'd make her a saint, Sister Teresa Maria. We have a break now, so we'll be back in 2 minutes and continuing on our subject and start thinking some things to call in and talk to us about. By the way, I meant to mention that our visitor next week is Father Michael Scanlon from Franciscan University in Steubenville, Ohio. Father Michael is one of my dear friends of many years, and I'm sure he will make a very interesting guest, so don't miss him. Now, let's talk a little bit about what we can do to encourage young women or young fellows to become brothers, girls to become sisters, because the communities are small, but they're beginning to grow. And what's going to happen next?
Well, I think it begins with learning their history, because it's a history of great heroism, and these women were very active on the frontiers of our country. They were in the wildest part of the West. They would be going to shopkeepers in the toughest towns like Trinidad, Colorado, and saying, passing the hat, they would say, look, you have 39 bars in this town. Don't you think you need a hospital, just one? And they would raise money, and they built a lot of our first hospitals and schools west of the Mississippi. And they did it in a time when most of the women in the West were either prostitutes or military wives, but their habits gave them this sort of badge of heroism. They could do good things, and they did. And they built kind of the American spirit in ways that a lot of Catholics aren't aware of. We had one of the earliest callers for SOAR was a real estate developer in Florida who said, John, I'm Jewish. I have a real estate development in Florida, and I want to give a house or two to an order of sisters. You just find me an order of sisters. And I said, well, why do you want to do that? And he said, well, I know these people. If I put them into my community, they're going to go door to door and develop a community spirit. That's what these sisters do. They've done it for a long time. I want them down here. I need them. And I thought, I didn't understand that as a Catholic, that they'd done all of this sort of infrastructure in places, you know, that you wouldn't think of. When sisters had a friend, his name was Billy the Kid, and she saved the town of Trinidad from his coming in and looting it, because she said, look, this is not the right thing to do. They were our great teachers. And so I think it begins with a little history, and then it begins with, this is a life where you can have adventures. This is a life where you can scratch that itch, that spiritual itch you have to do good for other people. This is a life where you can sacrifice and make something better than it was before. And that message needs to be out there, and it's not right now. It needs, Catholics have to understand where we come from, what we mean, and how much it's contributed to the American spirit.
And Father, I'd love nothing more than to labor for 30 or 40 more years in SOAR by making sure we have funding for all the younger sisters and brothers and priests that are joining our orders. Right now we have an imbalance, and therefore with our elderly brothers and sisters and nuns in retirement and in nursing homes and in facilities that require care, we don't have enough of the younger sisters that provide the funding. So that's where SOAR comes in. And we have our fundraisers through newsletters, direct mail, videos, and events that we hold in New York and Washington, as John talked about before. Nothing would please me more than knowing that we would have more work to do, because we have more sisters and brothers coming into the orders. First of all, it would relieve the imbalance that we have in the proportion of people who retire to those who are working, as we had a very nice balance in the 50s and 60s. And second of all, it would also probably help us attract more people to the work of SOAR. John alluded to it before. We just think that SOAR is a great secret that a lot of people don't know about, and we'd love to tell the Catholic community we're here. And we have our, if you want to contribute to SOAR, we have our website, and it will be shown on the broadcast today. And we would just ask you to consider a donation, but also think about what you could do to encourage a vocation within your community, within your family. And also, many times, Father, we've gone up to religious homes. I go up to Maryknoll, and I visit the sisters there. Just having someone coming in to visit the sisters. They have no families other than maybe their brothers or sisters, but they would love to see some Catholic come in to talk to them, to read to them, to just be part of their lives, and maybe just to say thank you. Thank you for what you've given us, because as John alluded to, the greatest public education system in this country was put together by the Catholic Church. And we are the greatest healthcare system that comes from the Catholic Church. And our social services that provide help to the poor, where does that come from? Are religious. And those men and women whose shoulders the success has been built upon now need our help. And again, Father, when we came here to visit with you, Sister Kathleen, John, and I, we walked in, and there was a sign over the seminary, "Be a hero. Think about a vocation." And I would say to you, if people are looking for a challenge, it is in the religious life. And there will be people in the laity like myself who will be there to support you. As I said, it's hard to think that many of our younger sisters and brothers 40 years from now, but time moves along. But we want to make sure we have the funding so that these unfunded liabilities are at a much lower rate.
Well, now, how does SOAR do this? How do you assist directly?
Well, we do it by bringing together groups of Catholics who have never come together before. Usually they're Catholic professionals, lawyers, doctors, managers, accountants, who come to our dinners and realize we have this common bond that we all agree on. We may not agree as Catholics on other things, but on this subject we do. That these sisters deserve a decent retirement. They taught us dignity. It's our turn to give back to them. And this reaches people. We had a former director of the Peace Corps write us in his will almost $300,000 and left it to us a couple of years ago. People are reminded that you really can't take it with you. You need to give it to somebody worthwhile, and there are a few causes in the Church that can match this one in terms of people that we need to give back to.
Well, we need to tell our audience, though, how do they contact SOAR?
Well, we have our address and our website. Just go to the SOAR website. You'll find our address, and you can find out about the great work we do. But, Father, to explain to the religious communities that are looking in tonight that may not even know that they could be eligible for a grant from SOAR, just go to the SOAR website, put your application in. Here's the saddest part. We receive requests for assisting religious that we can only fill 1/3. We have given $10 million since we have begun the work of SOAR. I wish I could say we've given $30 million. But we only can give the resources that we raise. So the money that comes to us will then be sent down to SOAR, where grant applications will come in from religious organizations. And Father, the stories are heart-wrenching at times. We need windows. We need reinforced storm windows. We need a minivan. We need wheelchairs. Think of our own elderly in your family. All the things that they need, your religious family needs also. So those requests come into SOAR, and Father, I wish I could come back a year from now and say we've met half of the requests that have come in. And that's how it goes. That's how we raise the money and give it out.
Very practical. How do you contact SOAR? SOAR. Now, you tell me you can get on the internet.
You can get on our website.
What do you type up?
And I think the SOAR logo is going across tonight on the broadcast, so people outside viewing this can see it. And SOAR is just on the internet. Go and type in SOAR, and you'll be able to find I know I got to be careful of saying this. It's SOAR at www.soar-usa.org.
Got to have all those things right, you know.
I think it's going to be right as it scrolled across the thing.
Scrolled on.
Yes, on the screen tonight. But the major thing is if people are willing to make a donation, and I know that many times Catholics are asked to give to so many worthy causes. But think about this cause as helping people who have touched practically all of our lives.
Well, I'm thinking of many people my age and around our time, people in their 60s, 70s, 80s, maybe some 90s, who went very much to school, to sisters, grammar school, high school, or perhaps college. And they will be, I think, responding very much. Recently, a sister who taught me in high school, Sister Catherine Moran, formerly known as Sister Mercedita, Sister of Charity. She just died at 98 years of age, and she was a superb teacher and a very kind person. I would say the sister that taught me in the second grade was the kindest person I ever knew. Now, I knew a couple of sisters that were tough. We had Sister Longinus, and she was named after the soldier who hit our Lord with the spear. And eventually, he was converted at the cross and became a priest. But Longinus taught us a few things, too.
Father, what your point, for me, sister in my life was not just someone, as I said, who gave you good, solid grounding in reading, writing, and math. They were your friend. They gave you encouragement. Some of them were your coaches. They loved sports. They were involved in your life. And they took an interest in you. And Father, from your pictures at your ordination, you saw the direct link between the sisters and your priestly vocation, which, you know, still carries over to today. So there's their influence in our sacramental life.
Well, there's part of that, the ruler-wielding nun is kind of a myth, because in the age, in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, when this occurred, they were doing the same thing in public schools. But it seems that Catholic sisters got the image of doing that. And I must say, the Sisters of Mercy you taught me, their weapon was love. And you soon became aware that they loved you. And it was a shaping event. We had big classes. The nuns were keen on discipline, because if you had 60 pupils, you had to make sure they listened. But life has a lot of rough lessons to teach you that are much harder to withstand than an occasional whack of the ruler. And that's a teaching moment in itself. They have done a lot for us, and now it's time for us to realize that, absorb it, and pass that on to the next generation.
Father, if I may, just briefly, in my visits to Mary Knoll, I met a sister 2 years ago, my wife Nancy and I. She was 102 years old. She was a registered nurse. And she told us of her experience in the Second World War. She was a nun in China, and she was captured by the Japanese. And she was retained by the Japanese to provide medical services to the communities that they were going back and forth in China with. And when the war was over, the Second World War was over, she was captured by the Chinese communists. And she stayed in China till 1951, till she was released. Talk about being a hero. Sister's a hero. And those are the lives that inspire us. And to this day, she's from Elizabeth, New Jersey. Her name is Kelly, and she's a wonderful, remarkable woman. And it's just the type of person that SOAR is there to help. And you develop the passion to make sure that you assist these people.
And a group of sisters I want to mention that we haven't touched on are cloister sisters. In many big cities, out in the suburbs, there will be a cloistered convent of Carmelites or Dominicans or Poor Clares, and these are sisters of prayer. This is not an easy life for years and years and years. And my life, I have very much moved by cloistered sisters of the Blessed Sacrament. I knew them all my life, and they prayed for us and encouraged us and prayed many people. And I was very aware that in our neighborhood near the sisters there were many Jewish people who went to the convent to get the sisters to pray for them. Say they do go to the. Now we have time for a break, and then we will have questions or comments or call in from our radio audience and also from the studio. So please have something to say. It doesn't have to be a question. Call up and tell us something. We'll be back. We're going to hear from our audience in the studio, and our first speaker is...
Hi, I'm Sister Kathleen Lunsman, IHM. First, I'd like to thank you, Father Benedict, for inviting SOAR to be on your program this evening. We're really grateful to you for that invitation. And I'd like to say thank you to all of the people in your audience who are benefactors of SOAR. Through their generosity, their prayerful support, and their financial contributions, they are touching the lives of aging religious. Through SOAR, they are helping to make a difference in the lives of aging religious. And I wonder, Father, if I could ask you a question.
Sure.
Do you have any advice for SOAR about how we might be able to reach out to younger people, good lay men and women Catholics, and invite them into this ministry of helping to support our aging religious? You know, sometimes young people haven't had the direct experience of having a sister, a brother, or a priest in their life. So how might we reach out to them and encourage them to support our aging religious now?
Well, one of the things that we're doing is having this program, and we're hoping that people are going to listen to the program and will respond, and they will contact SOAR, because they may not have too familiarity with sisters. Years ago, we did. As the three of us, we had sisters all the way through school. I went through grammar school and high school, and some women went sisters all the way to college. It was right the whole thing.
Caldwell College.
Yes. So Caldwell College. So we'll see if younger people now will get involved. I also very much hope the religious communities are going to be growing again, as we could see with the Sisters of Life here. There's 100 Sisters of Life, and that community is about how many years old? 19 years old, and there's a good many sisters. So we'd like to see religious communities starting to grow again. They'll never probably be as huge as they were, where there were so many teaching sisters, but there's more and more people interested, and I know from the young ladies at come to join our community, and the young gentlemen to join our community as well. They're surprising. You would not be expecting them all of a sudden to come out of the woods, so to speak, and looking for a vocation.
Father, one thing I've asked John to comment on regarding Sister Kathleen's question, there is an exhibit that was down in the Smithsonian that's now on Ellis Island about the heroic efforts of our nuns. John, I think if young people went to this exhibit itself, they'd be infused by the Holy Spirit to see what we're doing at SOAR and want to help. John?
Well, there's a big void there. Sometimes we go to young parents and describe our problem, and they'd say, well, we just ran around the corner to our parochial school there, and we didn't see any sisters, so what do we owe them? And the first question is, well, who do you think built the school out of their sweat equity? Who worked there for little or no wages as teachers? Why is that school there? And then go a little further to your local hospital and ask yourself, who built that? Who are the nurses? Who are the people that raised the money for that and built it? And 9 times out of 10, it would be Catholic sisters. So this book, Sisters, or Ellis Island, which is a touring exhibit around the country, they're teaching tools that give people that sort of missing chunk of their Catholic history that they need to know. I mean, we should keep in mind that before the Civil War, Catholics were I don't want to say persecuted, but we were frowned upon in this country. We were not welcome guests until the Civil War occurred and soldiers of all faiths realized that the nun standing beside their bed, the nurse who was helping them, 20% of them came from the Catholic Church. They were sisters. And after the war, you saw this sort of know-nothing, the nativism, the attacks on the Catholic Church drop because they had set an example for us. So now it's time for us to set an example, pay back to them, and also bring on a new, young, and vigorous generation that knows this and knows our history.
I certainly hope and pray the growing communities of sisters will come along and that some of the established communities that faded away may get back to their identity. Part of the problem was identity. And the 70s and 80s took a tremendous pain, not only orders of sisters, but of priests as well. And it's amazing. When I was a seminarian, a young priest, in the New York province of the Jesuits had 50 novices. I almost became one. And now I am told that there is one, where our little community didn't even exist. And right now we have, our small community has 8 novices, postulants coming in. We have a call from Mary Ann. You've been waiting, Mary Ann. Tell me, where are you from, and what are you going to tell us?
Yes, hello. I am from Illinois, and I have a quick question about how many of the dioceses, we're in the Peoria Diocese, have a collection for SOAR. I'm pretty sure ours has SOAR because I remember giving to that collection for the retired religious. My background comment would be that I am a certified teacher. I have taught both in public and Catholic schools. And my comment, watching what you're just saying here on the show as well, we need to reform our schools because you get sisters back in the schools. The young kids will know sisters, and they will want to love them and help them when they retire, just as I have done. Thank you.
We can only hope and pray in my old age to see the restoration of religious life in the Catholic Church. It's in the 70s and 80s, it was a catastrophe in the Catholic Church. And it was, people didn't admit it, and people aren't even admitting it now. But people should go back and look why the writers, speakers, preachers, teachers, even some of the bishops brought this catastrophe on the Catholic Church, losing religious orders and members. Do we have another question? Oh, we have a call from Sandra. Sandra, where are you from and what are you going to tell us?
I'm from Tampa, Florida, and I have a couple of questions. One, I'd like to know exactly what does unfunded liability mean, and two, I'm kind of confused, and I'm definitely heartbroken at the information I'm learning here. I don't understand why in our church there isn't, in the infrastructure, there isn't a program set up for these people. They've given their whole lives to the church, the formation of the church, and the formation of our country. I mean, I don't understand this. So if it wasn't for SOAR, their meetings, they said not basically, hopefully 50% of these needs. Now, if it wasn't, and then we know that it's not even possible right now to meet the other needs. Can something be set up, like I said, an infrastructure of the church? Because this is a tragedy. And you know, I have no problem myself contributing to anything that would be able to set up to do that in the church, because my favorite extra collection during the year is the Retired Religious Fund. That's my favorite. I look forward to it, and I try to give as generously as possible because that's just the right thing to do. I mean, so this information really needs to get out there because, and I'm glad you guys, I thank you for doing it because we need to know, we need to continue to do something about it. And I thank you for what you're doing.
Well, for many years, the sisters took care of themselves, and they did it nobly. They raised their own money. They had a rapport with the community. They were the big managers and the risk takers in the Catholic Church. They would take out big mortgages and finance hospitals. Mayo Clinic is a good example of what they've done. And so the spirit goes on, and I guess if young people really want to have adventures the way they did and learn how to continue large organizations that people depend on, that's a real challenge. And young people, I think, would enjoy that. What happened is their business plan was very simple. It was the Lord will provide. And he did for many years until we begin to see this. Well, women had other choices. They could be lawyers and doctors. Not all those careers were as satisfying as being a Catholic sister, but it's time to look at this sort of heroism again and to show that this challenge is still there, and the people who carried it on for years are waiting for younger women to take it on.
You know, and something interesting, there were vocation problems as well with seminarians and priests. And right now, it's rather fascinating to find that the seminaries are beginning to grow. The seminary in Philadelphia, St. Charles, and St. John's in Boston went from about 30 to about 90 seminarians in a couple of years. Here where I'm at the seminary now, at Dunwoody, it's the fellows in the minor seminary are coming in much larger numbers. And our little group of friars, for some reason, we grew what everybody else was losing. And now they've got other things to join, you see. So I mentioned the other day the Dominicans. And they're got about 21 novices right now. So there's a little bit of competition here right now.
That's good.
We have a call from Joe. Joe, where are you from? What are you going to tell us?
Oh, hi, Father. This is a very, very good topic that you're doing right now. I'm in Palm Springs, California. And can you hear me?
Yes, sure.
Okay, I'm calling from Palm Springs, California. I started school in September of 1941. And we were very blessed. We had the Ursuline nuns. They were great teachers. Now I'm nearly 75 years old. There is hardly a day that goes by that I don't think about them. Hardly a day. I worked in mid-management in business administration. And when I had a problem, I remember sitting at my desk and saying, well, what would Mother St. Alphonsus say now? Or what would Mother Mary Rita say? We called them Mother. We were educated in French, and we studied Latin for the Mass. And I'm glad that we called them mother because they really were our mothers while we were away from home. And that's my comment for today.
Thanks very much, and from the heart. I wonder if our speakers this evening right now would like to take a guess on, and it's a guess, where we're going to go in the future.
Well, I've met some of the novices who are now coming into some of the orders, and they all said the same thing. I had this high-paying job doing, you name it, Army captain, a ballerina, a manager in the post office, and it didn't fulfill me. I really wanted to get into something where I could be a nurturer, where I could help people. I have this need, and I found it in a religious order. And Lord knows we still have those needs. You can't ever pay people for the kind of service they gave. These people, I mean, yes, they taught us the 3 R's, and they taught us to keep our feet under our desks and to sit up straight, yes, sister. But they also taught us the meaning of dignity. And that sort of transcends public education. It means that human life deserves dignity, and the poor deserve dignity. And now we have this sort of pocket of poor in the church, retired religious, and they deserve dignity. Somebody asked us what an underfunded liability was. It's the amount of money that should be there for their retirement and the amount of money that is there. And that gap is growing. And that's something we can deal with. We just have to sort of put our shoulders to the wheel and do it.
And Father, because of the wonderful people at EWTN and yourself, with the message getting out, I think we're hitting the perfect storm. If we can raise the consciousness of our Catholic laity to what the need is of our elderly religious, if we can inspire young people to consider vocations and involvement in the church and religious life, then we are going to have the resources that not only will take care of the elderly religious, but to start, as John said, to close the gap in that unfunded liability. We will be here for you. We are laity that love our young religious just like we do the nostalgic remembrance of the nuns and the brothers who were in our life. We are the church. We are together. Christ is with us, and we shouldn't forget that.
We have a call now from Michael. Michael, where are you from, and what are you going to tell us?
Yeah, thanks for taking my call, Father. I'm from Spokane, Washington, and I went to a Catholic high school in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho in the 1960s, Immaculate Heart of Mary, which was Immaculate Heart of Mary Sisters. Good memories of IHM, and they made sure we read First Confession and First Friday Mass. But my question is, could corporations or nonprofit agencies help with funding?
Well, they do. They do in many ways. In my book, I have a story about the Ku Klux Klan that decided to run the nuns out of a small town in Indiana by setting up a separate hospital. And one night, a man came into the emergency room of the Catholic hospital and explained that he had a stroke, he was dying, he'd been thrown out of the other hospital because he didn't have any money, he'd forgotten his wallet. And they said, well, we're Catholic sisters, come in, we'll heal you. And they did. And he turned out to be the founder and the chief benefactor of the Klan's hospital. And so he wrote them out of the will, he wrote the sisters in the will, and they bought the other hospital. Sisters given half the chance will make the Lord provide. They know how to fill the gaps, poverty gaps we have in our country, the dignity and the cultural gaps, and we need to help them get out of their way and help them work.
And one of the things, John, too, is Michael's call was, there are executives in corporations all over the United States who are products of Catholic education, and Catholic families and upbringing. You have the means, and as I said, there are many worthy causes within the church that you can support. But SOAR complements and augments the work of the institutional church in providing support. Earlier, I think Sandra said, how can this situation exist? Well, there's so many needs within the church, keeping our parochial school system alive, helping to maintain our Catholic health care system. But I think we want to remember, with SOAR, we are contributing to the people who built these systems, and with the encouragement and prayerful support of vocations, younger people going into religious life know that SOAR will be there for them when they are ready for retirement.
We have a call now from Sonia. Sonia, where are you from? What are you going to tell us?
Father, I'm calling from Alabama.
Okay.
Father, and I'd like to thank these two gentlemen for the beautiful ministry that they're doing to our religious sisters, the unsung heroes of today. Now, my question, here's my observation, Father. We're just wondering, you know, many of our sisters have been given a bad rap by many people, especially the celebrities of today, making them as scapegoats for their miseries, their failures in life, etc. Now, I was just wondering if SOAR or other organizations are doing something to upset or negate these criticisms that sort of put them down so much. And I always think that they are unsung heroes that need to be uplifted, to be heralded, so to speak, of their good works. And so my question is perhaps, or my suggestion is perhaps maybe a script in the opening of a movie, a film, something along the line of maybe The Bells of St. Mary's with Ingrid Bergman, you know. Any thoughts on that?
Well, we have a special on just for tonight. If you order a book, this book, Sisters from SOAR, it's a $50 contribution. You give us a $50 contribution, and we'll give you the book for free. How about that? It begins to fill the sort of history gap that needs to be filled here.
And you have your information on our telling people.
Yes,
hold of you.
yes, they can take a look at the website that's scrolling across their screen. There are operators waiting, and again, a $50 donation gets you sort of the opening of this, the entry into the history. It's my book called Sisters, and you get that with a $50 contribution.
And the book goes for $27.95, so you're really doing rather well on that, I would say. Otherwise, you could order this book from St. Martin's Press, from a local bookshop.
Right.
Sisters. Right. And that's the way you get a book. We have to end right now. Oh, Lord, we thank you for calling in your name and all of our friends joining us in the audience. We ask you to bless all of our religious sisters and brothers, those who have helped us over the years, those who are working now. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Amen. And thank you. And this evening, we'd like to ask you to continue to please support EWTN. As you know, we have to keep all the everything turning, all the wheels turning. And I know that you will help us, help Mother Angelica to keep this wonderful program, wonderful network on the television. God bless, and we'll see you next week with Father Michael Scanlon.